In a world filled with hatred and negativity, Emily brings the world peace and love. She blesses the planet, the animals, and the human race with her light work. Join Mike and Melissa as they interview a real witch. Learn what witchery really is and how light work can bless the world. Stay tuned. Destination Mystery presents Case File 27.
You are listening to Mystery Media Group.
Yay! So your name is Emily.
Yeah.
You own a shop called Whimsical Wilderness. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it started in 2019 where I was only doing paintings because I've been a painter my whole life. So I started with paintings of like cryptids and aliens and zombie pirates and all kinds of weird stuff.
I love it.
It did okay, but paintings are definitely a unique market. And so it didn't do as well as I wanted it to, I guess. And so I actually had shut it down for quite a while. And then the more I got into witchcraft and things like that, I actually reopened it and I was making herbal candles and stuff like that. And then that actually took off pretty well. And I kind of realized like, I don't have a huge following, but the more people were following me, the more they were just interested in like any weird stuff I come up with. And so it's kind of just been a like mismatch of like all kinds of witchcraft stuff and candles. And I recently started putting more paintings and things like that in there too. So
isn't it crazy how many people are out there that are into all of that? When I first started my Instagram page, I was like, okay, I'm just doing this for me. It'll be fun because that's what I like. And I couldn't believe the response that I got from people.
Yeah.
Like it's
you
just
finally kind of feel like you belong because
exactly.
You don't realize how many people are like into talking to ghosts and like witchcraft and things like that. And it does kind of bring up it was overwhelming because I saw everybody else's stuff and I'm like, how do I stand out? Like, how do you make that stand out when you have so many other practicing witches that do the same thing and have the same thing? And, you know, how do you be original when so it was cool, but it was also intimidating, you know?
Yeah, I understand that totally. But I think I've discovered you do this for you and you do what you like. And when you're able to find that passion and stuff, that's when it really becomes.
It falls into line.
Yeah, it all falls into place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm new to the witch stuff and the light work and the crystals and all that stuff. I'm starting to learn a lot, but I'm new to all of it and I don't know much.
Yeah, I actually like when I started out it was in 2012, I had moved out to Washington State from Maine. And where I lived in Maine, that like witchcraft was not a thing. It was very much like if you were into that kind of stuff, you were weird. When I first started, I thought, well, to be a witch, you have to be Wiccan. That was my impression of it. Like you have to be Wiccan. And so I actually started on the Wiccan path and my mother-in-law is Wiccan. And so I had her teaching me and stuff like that. And I just kind of like, the more I learned about it, I'm like, I'm like really on board with all of it, but it still feels like religion to me. It still didn't fully connect. And when I actually started collecting haunted items is when I realized there is so much more to witchcraft than just being Wiccan. And I had a negative experience with my first haunted doll. And so that's where I found light working, because I kind of wanted to go the complete opposite of negative energy. And light working is definitely the most negative part of that. And so
what made you decide to collect haunted objects?
Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. The first time I saw them, I thought it was crazy. I thought, why would you want that? Like, why would you want to invite that in? And I don't know, to be completely honest. Something about it just really intrigued me because I've always been interested in what's out there, what's on the other side. And I grew up living across the street from a 1800s graveyard. And so I was like terrified of it, but also really intrigued. I don't know. The fact that it had been investigated prior, I guess it felt safer to do it, knowing someone else had it first. But looking back on that now, that's kind of a silly way to think of it. But I honestly couldn't tell you what possessed me to get it, like to actually go and buy it. But I did. And it did not work out the first time I had it. It was actually kind of a scary experience. But once I kind of got back into it, knowing more and knowing how to protect myself and stuff like that, that's when it got a lot more interesting and a lot less scary, I guess. Starting in Wicca, though, it was like a good baseline of learning kind of what being a witch entails and things like that. And you kind of realize that it is as vast as every other religion or anything like that. There's some people that believe in it and don't practice every day, or there's people that practice every single day and are very like that is their entire life. It's kind of a spectrum thing for most witches, I'd say. Mainly because I do light working, I use witchcraft and things like that for good, for helping others, helping animals, and helping the planet, which light working is very much about helping others. And growing up feeling kind of like the world is a scary place, I think part of me was just like, how do I contribute to the world in my way? And I think light working very much does that. I don't practice in anything dark. There are witches that practice very dark things that you see on movies, or you see like black magic, blood magic, things of that nature. But I'm very, very far away from that. I really try to use magic to help mainly animals and the planet. So that's kind of my goal with it all. Lots of protection magic, things like that.
Do you want to talk about what light work is to you?
In the beginning, I had heard the term a lot, and I think it is a fairly new term, but people that do light work can also be referred to as their star seeds. I'm sure you've heard of that. I don't know what you call it. It's kind of like a umbrella or like indigo children. Believing in the divine light. So rather than like a god or one deity or anything like that, you kind of believe in creation and it comes from divine light. So, and light workers are really, how do I help the planet and how do I help other people? I really like helping animals, and I've worked in the veterinary field for a long time doing that. And so, it's not like witchcraft to work at a veterinary office, but that was kind of my goal, was to help others. And so light workers really focus on making the world a better place and feel more connected to light and angels and things of that nature.
Tell us how animals respond to that.
I've found that throughout my life, I come across a lot of injured animals or animals needing help, more so than most. And I don't, I kind of believe that it's because of the path I'm on, but I usually don't do anything super special. But just kind of as like an example, we had a squirrel in our backyard that we used to feed every single day by hand. And one day she showed up in our backyard and she just sat on my back porch and she looked really, really sick. And so I went out and she didn't move. She just let me pick her up. And I could kind of tell she was on her way to passing. And so I held her. And light working, I personally, in my path, I communicate with angels a lot. There's the divine light, but angels are more of my go-to. So just kind of calling out for Archangel Ariel, because she helps animals, and holding her and comforting her was my way of, it's not always like rituals and things like, it was just more of like I'm here to help you pass easier. And she passed while I was holding her wrapped in a blanket. And so it's not always a big special thing, more of just going out of my way to be there for animals that are sick or injured or need somebody.
It might not have been a big special thing to you, but it probably was to that
Yeah.
squirrel.
They have a sibling that still comes to our porch every day and lets us feed it. So one of our things is that we, even if the animal is already passed, people consider roadkill and stuff like that. We try to move them off the side of the road. And that's kind of another one of those things where it's not ritualistic. It's not a big spell or incantation or anything, but it's what I feel my purpose is to give these animals or anything really, that dignity. When I worked in veterinary practices, I was always in charge of dealing with the bodies after euthanasias. And that was like really, really special to me because of how I feel about that. And some people just kind of view it as a job and you do it, but it was more of a spiritual thing for me to work with these animals and, give them that respect and dignity and cleaning them up and making sure that they're at peace. I can't speak for all light workers, of course, but my path specifically has been gravitated towards things like that.
And I'm sure the owners of these animals appreciate that very much.
Yes, very much so. There's been a few emotional instances working in hospitals like that, with whether they were emergencies or just, an animal that was old. It still was always the same to me and always took every single one to heart. If I did one a night or 5, every single animal mattered to me.
We actually just recently had to put our dog down. He was 15. We had him for 13 years. We got him when he was 2, but
Wow.
he had just gotten to the point where, he couldn't see, he couldn't hear, he couldn't walk, he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. And he was just in a lot of pain with his joints and everything. And we found a vet that came to our home and was able to put him to sleep with all of us surrounding him and holding him. It was probably one of the most special things I've ever done. And because we love, he was part of our family for 13 years. My kids grew up with him, and it was kind of a special moment. As sad as it was, we all got to be there when he passed on, and you could definitely feel like the minute his spirit left his body, it was like you could feel it. And it was a peaceful feeling, not a scary feeling. And our other dog was in the room with him, and he kind of just went to the corner and laid down, and how he just knew.
And that, I know that other animals, I know most people know that animals can sense things we can't. And I know I've seen something like that as well, where the other animal that has lived with the animal that's passing just definitely knows. And the way they deal with it is sometimes very, very sad and almost human-like. I've heard dogs cry and things like that. And it is very, very sad, but especially to have a veterinarian come to your house and things like that. And I'm really happy that they do that nowadays, because being at home is definitely less stressful and less traumatic. Yeah.
What you do matters. It's important, and that's awesome.
Thank you. I've always felt like it did. And I don't talk of, like working in hospitals or anything. I'm not like talking about that side of it to coworkers and things like that. I just kind of keep it to myself, but especially with euthanasias and things like that, I definitely take it more of a spiritual way than most, I guess.
I am here and listening. I just got so involved that I forgot I was part of this.
I always feel like I talk way too much.
Well, you do such a better job than I do.
I don't know.
I had a question, though.
Yes.
You talked about your first haunted object. Do you mind asking what it was?
It was a doll. I can tell you guys the story if you want.
Yes, I want to know about what happened with this haunted doll.
Believe it or not, it wasn't the doll that actually was the it was the problem, but the spirit attached to the doll was not what was negative. But we had moved into an apartment, and about 2 days before we had moved in, the apartment complex called and said, "We forgot to tell you that somebody had passed away in the apartment a month prior." I was just like, "That's fine. I know you can't tell us much about it. I just want to know, was it violent? Is there anything I should be aware of?" And they said, no, it was not violent, but they could not tell us anything else. So when we moved in, nothing too crazy happened. But when I had gotten the haunted doll, they said that the spirit attached to this doll was a young woman from Ireland, and she was a preschool teacher. She had died of brain cancer. I didn't really get too much into knowing the spirit that was attached to it, because for some reason, when this doll got here, things just went to complete chaos. We had electrical disturbances. We had doors shutting. We had feelings of people were touching us, and we would see shadows in the hallway. When my kids would be taking a bath, the light would turn off on them, and it would just totally scare them. And it just all of a sudden it felt like the energy had shifted. And I had just started out communicating with spirits at that point. And so I had actually been using a pendulum with like a spirit board. And so it could spell things out kind of like a Ouija board, but it was used with a pendulum instead of a planchette. And I was getting really scary messages, kind of like, I see you, you're going to burn, just really, really unsettling things. And I'm like, I would ask whoever I was speaking to, are you attached to the doll? And it would say, no, get her out of my house, and things of that nature. And anytime I would ask who I was speaking with, it would feel like somebody was touching me or somebody was smothering me almost. And I would just get really, really uneasy. And so I started getting really weary of the doll, of course, because none of this happened until this doll came. And I asked if it was attached to the doll again. It said, no, this is my house. And I said, were you the one that passed away here before we moved in? And he said, yes, you all need to leave. Now, it seemed like bringing a haunted item in, like, really aggravated whoever was already here. That's kind of what I got from it. There was no problems until I brought this haunted doll in. And so things kind of escalated from there to where we were getting touched like daily. It would feel like static, like you could feel. I remember one instance specifically that just scared me to no end. I was cutting vegetables for dinner and it felt like somebody had walked up behind me and grabbed both arms, and it was just horrifying. And I remember I got rid of the doll because I was just like, I can't tell. Obviously, I can't see who I'm talking to. So I got rid of the doll thinking, I don't know if it's something is attached to it that's negative and lying to me, or I had just begun witchcraft and things like that at that point, and I didn't know what I had gotten myself into. So I ended up actually getting rid of the doll, and it was very hard to find someone else to take it because I couldn't tell them if it was negative or not. That was my first experience. Once we got rid of the doll, things calmed down, and we are not in that apartment any longer, thankfully. But it was a very, very spooky experience. And it took me a long time to get back into it because I didn't really know what I was doing, essentially, when I got into it the first time. So I did a lot of research and learning after that.
I was just telling Melissa, I was doing some work in this lady's apartment, and she has a bunch of dolls, like Raggedy Ann type dolls. And she had one sitting in her chair, and we had just watched Conjuring not long before. And as we went into her apartment, nobody was home. It was quiet. And as we went around the chair, the doll said hello to my daughter.
Oh my God.
The hell out. Turned out it was the cat, but we thought it was the doll for a while, and we had a good laugh. It scared the crap out of us.
I would have been scared too.
I have quite a few of them, but nothing like super crazy happens here. I practice a lot of protection work nowadays and try to keep that at a minimum, especially because I have multiple children. And we do have one child who has nonverbal autism. So even if something scary happened, like, he can't tell us. And that kind of creeps me out because I don't know if sometimes he's having nightmares in the middle of the night or if he's seeing something. I don't know. He can't tell me. If any crazy activity comes, when I bring a new item in, then I get rid of it because I can't risk that with children,
Yeah. Is it your son that has autism?
Yes, I have 2 children that have autism.
Oh, okay. Could notice if they sense things more than others do. Yeah.
Yes. My middle son, Harrison, he's had multiple times where he would be in a full-fledged tantrum or a meltdown, and he would be screaming and screaming and screaming, and he would just stop in the middle of it, and he'd look up and he'd start giggling.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's had a few of those. And my dad passed away in 2014, and I've always hoped and thought that it was probably my dad. I don't know for sure because I don't see anything, but there's been a few times. And I know my daughter, who's 11 now, after my dad passed away, she was in the backyard playing, and she was being a weird kid and doing all these weird karate moves out in the backyard. And I was watching her, and all of a sudden she was doing these karate moves, and then she stops and she looks up and she looked like she was talking, and then she started giggling. And I was just standing there staring at her did I really just see her do that? We've had a few instances with her particularly that she doesn't have autism, but she's definitely seen some things. In that apartment I just told you guys about, she would wake up constantly saying that somebody tapped her on the shoulder and said, hey, or she would feel like there was something in her closet. Very intuitive. I know Harrison, I think, probably does, but we just can't be sure because he can't talk. So we might never know.
When you said that about your son, about being throwing a tantrum and then looking up into the corner and giggling,
Yes.
that gave me chills because that's my sister's oldest child. He was not nonverbal, meaning they don't talk, right?
Yes.
He would be in the middle of a tantrum, be upset, and then he would do the same thing. He'd look up in the corner, giggle, and he was looking at someone and
Yes.
talking to him, and he was as happy as could be.
Yes. Yes.
We always wondered who he was talking to, but
yes. Yeah. Great. He's also been in the living room dancing and watching a show or something, and he like stops and turns around like somebody tapped him on the shoulder. And we do have a video, I'll have to send it to you guys, of him dancing in the living room, and it looked like a little orb was like dancing around him while he was dancing. So I think that he can see things. My older son that has autism, he used to be nonverbal for quite a while. He talks now, but he did the same kind of stuff when he was little. And I remember seeing like lights around him when he was a baby and things like that. So I don't know if spirits are more gravitated towards them because maybe they can see them. That's kind of my theory, is that they don't have as many mental barriers to prevent them from seeing things like that.
I think you're right.
I think you are too. And one theory we always had growing up was that some of these children who are sent to Earth this way were very special spirit children, before they came here. And they probably do have extra angels or protection or something watching over them to help them get through, or whatever their purpose is.
Yes, I feel the same way. And I know that with my middle son, Harrison, one of his symptoms of autism is he escapes and runs away. And it's because he has no sense of danger. And obviously for us, that's terrifying, but it's just astounding to me that nothing's ever happened to him. There's been times where he actually had gotten outside in the middle of the night and I was woken up by somebody tapping on my shoulder or something, like weird ways of being woken up and just catching him in the nick of time. And those are kind of things where I firmly believe that either someone's protecting him or someone protecting me and alerting me to those things. That's just kind of my belief anyway.
I think it is totally that. My sister has several stories like that too, because he was a runner. He liked to run. I remember times when we would be having a family picnic at the park or whatever, and then all of a sudden we're like, where did he go? Yeah. And we're all searching all over for him, panicking.
Yep.
As lady came out and said he was in her bed, he crawled in there, rolled up, and was comfortable. And
at a neighbor's
house.
He was
all right with it, but we felt bad.
My son recently had run off, and he really likes, kids with autism usually have really particular interests. And my son is obsessed with cars. So I think he decided that he wanted to see real cars, and they found him in the main road. Obviously that's horrifying for me, but he didn't seem fazed at all. I mean, he was just mad that they brought him home. He was more upset that he couldn't play with the cars.
What are some lessons or things that they've taught you just by being their mom?
They have taught me so much. They still do. I know that sounds like super cliche and tacky, but they do. They really do. When our first son was born, it was from the get-go. We knew that something was up because he cried all the time. I mean, all the time. He never stopped. It was always screaming and crying, and I thought there was something wrong with him, and they would run tests, and there's nothing wrong with him. And he was diagnosed very, very early. Seeing two kids with the same diagnosis and be completely different has taught me a lot in itself of just the basic, what autism is. People know it's a spectrum disorder, but I don't think people really understand how big the spectrum is. Like I said, my kids could not be more different. One's really social, one's really secluded, things like that. But they have taught me lots of patience, especially with nonverbal kids. You have to put yourself in their mindset of being patient and understanding that they're not functioning the same way. They're not thinking the same thoughts I'm thinking. And they've taught me to really slow down and just try to communicate the best we can. And communication doesn't look the same for them. And so that's a big thing. Lots of different communication techniques, whether it's sign language or things like that. I think that seeing how magical they are as kids is the best thing that we've learned so far. And I know my husband agrees. When we see them excel in those very particular subjects that they're really into, even though they're really off the wall and weird, it's the coolest thing. And it's learning about autism in general has been a wild ride, and it doesn't stop. It's like we learn something new every single day about it.
So how does your light work? Are you able to use that to help them?
Yes. And actually my oldest with autism, he's 7 now. And since he was a little kid, he's loved crystals. I've always collected crystals. It started as kind of just like, oh, they're really pretty. But the more I learned about energy working and light working and things like that, they're definitely used for different things. And so it's really interesting to see the ones he picks and teaching him about them. And he actually, the other day, he was having a really hard time calming down. And he said, Mommy, I need the rock. And I was like, what rock? And he went and he picked out a specific crystal. And he said, I need to put it right here and put it on his forehead.
You knew it was going to help him.
Yeah. And he put it right on his forehead. And he just said, I need this. I need the rock. And he just laid there with it on his forehead. And he ended up falling asleep. He's always in my room at my altar, grabbing things off my altar. What's this? What's this? And like it's just be careful. Don't keep grabbing everything. But he's very interested in magic in general.
What are some of your favorite crystals, or does it just depend on what you're doing?
It honestly changes just like every couple months, to be honest. I have gone through phases. Right now, though, garnet is like my top favorite. I honestly couldn't even tell you why. It just is. I also like aquamarine. That's one of my favorites.
Do you find that your son tends to gravitate towards the same ones over and over, or is it different for him?
Oh, yeah. He gravitates towards the same ones. And they're not really the ones you would think, because I know, like, as a kid, and my husband did the same thing. Like, you would find the really sparkly amethyst. It looks pretty, so that's the one you grab. He doesn't go for the prettiest ones. He goes for the ones that make him feel better, which is really interesting. He goes for lots of like calming crystals. So like manganocalcite, he really likes celestite and angelite and things like those, where he gravitates towards those. They may not be the prettiest ones, but those are the ones he wants. And I've never taught him to put them on his forehead or anything like that. He just goes with it. And I thought that was really cool because I haven't taught him that. I remember when he fell asleep, he had it on his forehead, and I'm like pointing to him, trying to get my husband's attention, like, look.
Don't touch it.
I was really, really proud. Like, he knew what to do.
That's crazy. Yeah. I don't even know what to do. Yeah, I'm still learning.
In the beginning, I'm like, there's no way that a rock would help me with my anxiety. There's no way. I collected them, but I just did it. Just thought they were pretty and I wanted them, and kind of like crow brain, where you're like, shiny things, I just want to collect them. But the more I learned about them and the more I started just thinking that they were only used for specific things that you find on the internet, like a list of uses, and rather like actually holding them and determining what I felt while holding them was a really big part in learning. Because some of them, don't work for other people. My mother-in-law, I'll hand her one. I'm like, feel how amazing the energy is this. And she'll hold it and she's like, I don't feel it. And like hematite was one of those where I had just held it and it felt sedating almost, which was so weird to me. I've never felt anything like that with crystals, but hematite definitely gave me some sort of anxiety reducing stuff, because that's the only one that I've ever felt that strong of energy with, which was really interesting.
Well, I know people that carry around a different crystal in their pocket every day. They swear it helps them.
I used to do that when I worked at an emergency room in Seattle. I would always they'd like hear me walking down the hallway because I'd have multiple in my pockets of my scrubs, and they would just be like jingling. And honestly, I don't find anything wrong with people collecting them because they think they're pretty. If it makes you happy, like that's an intention as well. Yeah, they
place them around your home. They make your home look beautiful.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, if it has a positive, effect on your mental state, then that's working. It doesn't matter what the internet said it's used for, like if you're happy with it, then it's working. So
I was very interested in your light work. What can someone do to get started in something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing in any pathway at all is researching, because before you do anything, especially regarding like witchcraft and things like that, research is always key. If you are drawn to light working, chances are that that's what you're supposed to be doing, because it is a calling that is not easy. You can help people with grief, and you can help dying animals or dying people for that matter. There's death doulas that consider light working. You're helping people. And light working also entails helping spirits on the other side and helping them cross over, things like that. And so I think that that's researching and really contemplating, like, if you are emotionally ready to, it's not always, it is light work, but it's not always love and light and happy things. It's a lot of difficult moments for other people that you're helping them through. And
make sure you're prepared for all that.
yeah, and that's something I kind of wish that I had done in the beginning. I researched a lot, but I don't think anyone ever told me that. I think that that's a really important thing for people to know, is that, and that's not to deter anybody at all. It's just nobody ever told me helping the world and helping animals and people, it's going to make you feel good, but it's hard sometimes in the moment. It's hard whether you're dealing with spirits or animals or people or the planet. Even trying to help the planet it's hard sometimes because you feel like it's too big. I can't possibly help everything, and you can't, but
every little piece of trash you pick up off the ground
yes,
helps in its own little way. Yeah.
Yes. And so I would say that researching definitely, like, what a light worker is. You're not going to like practice every aspect of it, but kind of determining like what you feel called to do and research on how to practice that or ways you can do that. And it, like I said, it doesn't always have to be ritualistic or typical witchcraft that you would think. It's helping. It's being a good person for the better good, really. Volunteering is fantastic, and trying to help the planet a little bit. I would take my daughter out and we'd go and we'd take like a 2-mile walk and pick up trash. Stuff like that, like just in your neighborhood, like that's helping. That's, because that helps animals, that helps the planet, that helps other people. And if everybody has the mindset of, well, somebody else will do it, nothing's ever going to get done.
Or I can't do it all, so why even try? Yeah.
Exactly. And that was something I struggled with a lot. Still do have that feeling sometimes. You feel defeated, but it's knowing that every little bit is important because there's thousands of others doing other little bits.
That's amazing. I really appreciate that message, and the work that you're doing is how you're affecting others. And every little bit that you do is just one more thing to put a better spin on the world.
Yes. And that's what I want, even if you're not like looking into light working or anything, but just day to day, like don't feel defeated about how big the issue seems, because it does. If everyone does just a little bit, that helps. And don't let the bigness deter you, I guess, is the way I'd put it.
Michael, anything you want to ask before we end?
Well, we were talking about crystals, and it got me thinking about those ones I gave you. That little glass. You got to have that glass container, right?
Uh-huh.
We have those all over the house. Because we went to Crystal Park. We kept every single one we could find. They're not great pieces. They're fragments and little ones, but we kept them all, and they are stored all over our house. We have geodes with the purple amethyst and trilobites and dinosaur bones. And I love rocks. I've been collecting my whole life. I never gave it a thought about any healing properties, but they bring joy into my life.
Well,
they're everywhere in our house.
Yeah, and Michael, you have a very welcoming atmosphere in your home. Maybe that's why.
Is it because of my rocks? Because I'm going to tell my wife that, and she'll get mad at me.
My rocks.
I've tried that with my husband. It doesn't work, I promise.
Well, I've heard putting a crystal in every window is a good way to invite positive energy into your home. So maybe you can make sure you have one in every window, Mike. I don't know.
My daughter now has them in her window, and she keeps them like under her mattress and stuff like that. So,
I've never thought about it, but I'm going to do that. I'm collecting, I collected a bunch of quartz this last weekend, so maybe I'll do that.
I have bowls of crystals laying around everywhere, and my husband will find them everywhere. And when he used to wash my work clothes, he's like, "Can you please take the rocks out of your pocket before I do your laundry?"
I've been told that too.
Yep. I bring them everywhere. I have them in my purse. I have them in my pockets. I have them on our kitchen counter, our table, everything. They're everywhere.
I came home with a big pocket of rocks this weekend too.
My mother-in-law does it too, but they're not even she's so funny because she's like, they're not even like pretty crystals or anything. They're just rocks. She just likes rocks.
I like rocks too. And hey, this one looks cool to me.
Yep.
I'm going to take it home.
Yep. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, how can people find you? How can they find your shop?
It is on Etsy under Whimsical Wilderness 0. Etsy.com/shop/Whimsical Wilderness 0. And it's also linked on my Instagram as well. And I'm on TikTok as well. So it's all linked together.
Cute store. I mean, my favorite are your candles. Yeah, I'm really glad you decided to join us. It's been fun. So
yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you enjoy our show, please like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. We will be introducing other Mystery Media Group guests in our upcoming episodes, along with weekly bonus material. If you'd like to see more pictures and evidence from our adventures, visit www.destination-mystery.com. You will find a link to our blog, as well as a link for merch and contact information. Until next time, find your own destination.
Solve the mystery.
This is a production of Mystery Media Group.
Yay!